All right, we're back with part 4 of Unity CG Shader tutorial series. And in just to recap, in part 3, what we did was we finally got the textures. So we made a simple texture, and then we made a two-sided version. We're going to expand on that in lesson 4 by doing dual textures. So we're going to have two textures in our shader. Before we get into that, though, there was one other thing I wanted to show you. In We're going to start. This shader here is equivalent to the simple single texture shader that we wrote before. I just renamed it, called it Simple Texture Vertfun, and as you can see, it's just displaying the texture that we have selected here. Nothing special going on here. We've already seen all this. But we haven't done much in the Vert program. So basically all we've been doing is filling out our fragment input. We've been setting a position in a UV and passing it on. And just to kind of get you thinking about things, I wanted to show something else that you can do in the Vert program that you might not have seen before. So we're going to just add some simple vertex distortion. And we're going to do this in a super easy way, so it's easy for you to see exactly what's going on. So we have our input, and we have our vertex position. Now it's going to take the X position and move it around. So what I'll do is I'll just do a plus equals, and we'll use a Unity built-in, and it's called sine time. So sine time is pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Unity will actually give us the sine of the current time, and they provide it in a number of different formats. This actually has X, Y, Z, and I believe W as well. Sine time.x is just normal sine of the time. Y would be over, I believe it's time over 20, and you can look up Z in Unity's documentation. That'll be your homework. So we'll just do, to start off, a sine time x, and we'll multiply that by the vertex y coordinate. So that'll just give us, it's basically going to be changing the x position of the vertex for each vertex. So let's hop on over to Unity and see what we got. And we have nothing. And that's entirely expected. Time does not move when we are not playing. So let's go ahead and push play and see what we get. Okay, so now we're seeing something. So we're actually seeing our verts there are actually shifting. So that's a little bit too slow. So let's just bump up the time here. We'll use the W parameter, which I believe is over 100, but best check the docs to learn. Okay, that's a little better. So you can see what's happening here is in our vert program now, for each vertex, we're actually going to have basically the sine time is just going to be oscillating. And by multiplying it by the y coordinate, we're going to get this neat little shift back and forth. All right, that's it for verts for now. I just wanted to let you to show that there is more we can do in this in the Vertex program, and we'll do more in future tutorials. And there's some pretty neat things you can do in there, moving stuff around, expanding in your normal directions. Lots of neat stuff we can do in there. So let's get into our dual textures. So I have a dual texture mix here, and this is again just taking off, starting off where we were before. So we're in the transparent queue. We're being good citizens. We have Z right off, and we have our blend function, simple alpha blending, and all the normal stuff that we've seen. We have our fragment inputs just going to be the position in the UV, and all we're doing is getting the main texture color and returning it. So let's hop back over here and actually set that as our current shader. And that was dual texture mix, and sure enough, it's exactly what we have now. So now what we need to do is we need to add in a second texture so we can actually mix something. So I'm just going to grab this here, and we'll call this one second text. And of course, anytime we add a texture, we have to add the uniform for it. And I think I've mentioned this before, but you don't actually have to put in the uniform in Unity. If you were working in GLSL, you would absolutely have to, but Unity does more magic for us with shaders there. So I'm kind of a creature of habit from the GLSL days, so I always put it in there, and it also makes it explicit what you're doing there. So in addition to that second text, we need our magic underscore st, which, if you remember, has the goodies needed to be able to do the transform text, so we can take scale into account and offset. So the next thing we need to do is we need second UVs in here. So we'll just call it UV2, and it'll be type text coordinate 1. And much like this, we're going to actually just copy paste that and fill in the goodies. So we have a UV2, and we want that to actually be second text. Okay, so now we have a second UV. We have a second texture. Go back over here, and you can see we have two textures now, and we'll just leave those as they are. We're still only outputting one, but that's easy to fix. We can just go in here and give ourselves a second, grab a second texture sample here. So we do that by basically copy pasting, and we want to sample the second text. And remember, we have a different set of UVs for this one, so because this texture might be a different size, a different shape. So we'll do UV2 there, and we do want this to be second text color. Okay, so there's lots of different ways we can do this. One way we can do it is to just multiply them together, and let's see what that gives us. And yeah, it's interesting. Another thing we can do is use the lerp method. Lerp is equivalent to mix if you're coming from GLSL, and it works just like lerp does in your standard scripts. So you have a first parameter to lerp, a second, so we have two colors, and then the third parameter is going to be a number between 0 and 1 that's going to say how much of each we should put. So this one will put half of this and half of this, mix them together, and that's what we get. So of course we can, if we wanted a little bit more of the second texture, we do something like that. If we wanted a little more of the first texture, we can do something like that. And this right here is something that's just begging to be a property. So let's just go ahead and make it a flow property. So what that'll allow us to do is from code, we'll be able to change that on the fly, or designers would be able to change the mix right in Unity using the inspector. So let's stick ourselves a little texture mix in here, and call that texture mix. And you know, if we do have designers playing around with this, we want to make sure that they can't do anything dumb. So let's make it a range property, and we'll default it to 0.5. If I make it a range, it gives them a slider, and they can only do values between 0 and 1, which will make sure that this actually works properly. So we can make this type fixed, because remember, fixed is going to be between -2 and 2. Will only be between 0 and 1, so we're good to go with that. And we can come down here and replace that constant, and now we have a configurable shader. So you can see we have the texture mix over here, and we can now mix these two textures any way we want. And of course we can change that from code as well. Alright, so we'll do one more here. So we have our mix, so let's do a dual texture wipe. Now this shader, let's close everything else here. So you can see right now it's basically the same thing we had previous, and let's just make this active. And we got our dual texture wipe, and you can see it's exactly what we had before. It's just a copy and paste of the last one. So first thing we want to do is get ourselves out of the transparent queue. We'll go into the geometry queue. We're not going to be using transparency for this one, so let's have a look at what we got. Okay, so now you can see we no longer have transparency. That's good, that's what we want. And jump back over here, and for this one when I say wipe, what I mean is it's going to essentially be, I want to make this configurable so that if we were in this position, for example, there would be a line here, and everything to the left of it would be texture 1, and everything to the right of it would be texture 2. So it allows us to have a kind of a vertical wipe that we can, I guess it would be a horizontal wipe on there. You could, of course, make it a vertical wipe, and that wouldn't be all that much different than what we're going to do. So what we need in here to be able to pull this off is a few little things. The first we're going to need to do is we're going to want to know the local position. So we'll make that a fixed 2, and make that text core 2. Oops. 2, not 2D. And we're going to want to, in our Vertex program, we're going to want to actually calculate the local position here. And we're dealing with a bunch of primitives, so all of these are going to be between 0.5 and negative 0.5. Our actual vertex positions, and we want that in a range of 0 to 1 like before. So we'll just do a real simple addition here. We're going to do vertex xy, so that's going to be some number between 0.5 and between negative 0.5 and 0.5, both parameters, the x and the y. And we'll just add 0.5, 0.5. So that essentially just biases it so that we now will always be between 0 and 1. Okay. So now we have our local position, and we have our textures all set up. So we have all the data we need at this point. So all we have to do now is get our wipe going. To do that, we're going to want to get rid of our lerp here. This is no longer required. And so remember, anything to the left of the texture mix, we're going to want to be texture 1, and anything to the right, we're going to want to be texture 2. So we have our local position that we already set up, and we'll take the x value of that. And if it's less than texture mix, we will return main text color. And as you can imagine, the else will be returning our second text color. Okay. Simple enough. Let's hop over here and see what we got. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move the slider around so we can see how this is working. And you can see that it's working on our sphere, it's working on our capsule, and it's working on our cylinder over here, but for some reason something's not right. Let's go ahead and see what's going on here. I'm going to zoom in on this plane. So what happens if I move the plane over? So you can see that the plane is actually working, but it doesn't appear to be using the local position of the verts, and this is something that you have to deal with if you're working with batching. So in this particular case, we're getting this odd behavior because of batching. So you can see the same thing with this cube over here. If I move the cube, you can see when I get to this position, it starts to actually work, and that's dead center 0, 0, 0. So it's using world space coordinates. So it's not exactly what we want. And just to demonstrate that it actually is working, I'm going to delete one of the cubes and one of the planes, and now look what we got. So now our wipe is actually working. And the reason it's working now is because by removing that plane and removing that cube, we've taken care of everything that was batching. So there's nothing else batched here. Just simply having a second cube in the scene, now we have batching set to 1. So once we're batching, the positions that we're getting in that shader are not what we're expected. So just wanted to make sure that you see that gotcha. And you can see we get funky little artifacts now when we start moving things around. So you have to be careful with batching. That's the lesson there. All right, so this is okay, but we can actually make this a little bit better. So it's the way it's currently set up. It's just a straight line right down. There's no blend of these two textures, so I think it would look a little bit better if we actually had a blend. So we'll say like, so anything a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right of this, let's just blend that. And that's not too hard to do over here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just move this down here. I'm going to move this down here as well. And just to confirm that nothing actually changed, you can see we're still getting everything as we expected. Now the reason I want to do that is because there's going to be times, for example, over here where we are only sampling one texture, or times over here where we're only sampling one texture. So we don't want to put any extra instructions in our shader. So by moving those down there, we'll make sure that we're only ever sampling a single texture at any one time. Now there's going to, of course, be times when we want to sample two textures and blend them because of what we're doing. So in this center area, we're going to do a little blend. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get the, well, we actually already have it. So we have our position here. So I'm just going to store this in, actually what we need is the distance. So we'll call it distance from mix point. And that's going to be texture mix minus the x position. So that is, so remember, texture mix is between 0 and 1. Our local position is between 0 and 1. So this is just the distance between our actual passed in mix value and the current x position. Okay, so we're going to want to float, or we're going to want to do a mix of this whenever the distance is some value. So I'm just going to make up a number. So we'll say if the distance is, we'll call it maybe like 0.2 on either side. So we'll say if the distance from mix point, and we're absent that just because we're going to be negative when we're on the right side and positive when we're on the left side. So by just abs is just like mathf.abs, it just is going to get rid of that negative sign if it exists for you. So we'll use that value of -2. And this is also something that would make a good property. Maybe we'll stick that in a property next after we see how this looks. Okay, so now we need to know how much are we actually going to mix this. So we'll call it mix factor. And it's going to be equal to 1 minus the distance from our point plus 0.2 divided by 0.4. And this is basically just going to get us a value that we can use for our lerp function. And the math is pretty simple. We're just taking, if remember, we went 0.2 on either side. So we want to make sure that we get a value in here that's going to be between 0.2 to the left of the value, and it could be over here. So we want it between 0.2 of here to the left of the right, and we'll want this to mix based on how far we are. So if we're over here, for example, like way over here, like 0.15 past our mix value, we want to have the mix be more of this second texture, the bricks, and less of the earth. So now we're going to use that lerp function again. And we'll actually do our texture lookups here. And now you see why I wanted to move these. It's because when we're in this particular block, when we're in that center area, we're going to be sampling both textures. When we're further to the left, we're only going to be sampling the first texture. When we're further to the right, we're only going to be sampling that second texture. So let's stick the mix factor in here and jump back over, and look what we get. We have a nice, a little bit more even of a blend going on there. Alright, that wraps up part 4 of the shader series. We'll be back with lesson 5 next time, and we'll perhaps maybe jump into lighting, which is where we start to get some real fun stuff, and we can do bump mapping and all kinds of other goodies once we have a good understanding of lighting. But that's it for now.